and welcome to the next episode of DDR, a podcast all about your favorite Drow, Drizzt Do'Urden. My name is Justin, and in this episode, we'll be diving deep into Chapter 23 of Homeland, titled A Single Clean Blow, discussing all of our favorite plot points, characters, and more.
And my name is Jeffrey. You know, we're pretty big fans of the D&D tabletop role-playing game, so we're going to take parts of this chapter and see how, they might relate to the game. It's a neat way of looking at the lore in the book and the mechanics of the game.
Following along with the show is easy. Just grab a copy of the book, read the next chapter, and tune in every week. But remember, we want to hear your thoughts too, so you can share those with us via email at drizztdoneright@gmail.com.
Or when you're done with this episode, go ahead back and look at the description for it. And you know what you're going to find? This little link for the Discord. This is our Dim Light Squad, and it's where we take the conversation beyond the page. We can sit here and talk into the microphone for what seems like forever. But honestly, you all are the engine that drives this show. So click that link. Join the Dim Light Squad. Check out the creature feature, the spoiler room. It's marked for people who want to discuss parts of the story that take place in other books. It's kind of like, our virtual Menzo Berenson, and we look forward to seeing you there.
I like that, Jeffrey.
Right? Every once in a while.
Menzo Berenson.
Sometimes nuggets just fall out when you don't expect them to.
Very cool, very cool. So how have you been?
I've been pretty good. I've just been sitting around consuming a bunch of media. I had my buddy come on down from the other podcast, the Robert and Robin's Radio. Robert
Great
came
podcast.
down and he paid me a little visit, and we did a little D&D session. I ran my first DM campaign.
Nice.
It's interesting seeing your side of the world.
It's a lot, right?
It is. And but it's also fun. It really kind of gives you an idea why you people will, I guess, clip parts of it. Like I think I was telling you before, I started out with like two little kobolds, that my party had fallen asleep after session 0, and I thought it was going to be like do a little intro like the old game Golden Axe. When you reach an end of an act, you would fall asleep, and then these little elves would run in and they'd steal your stuff, and you'd have to go kick them and get your potions back, right?
Ah, that's a cool idea. Yeah.
So I was like, God, these two little kobolds, not even like winged kobolds, they're just in there, and the person with the most passive perception wakes up and sees them rummaging through the bag first. And then, it got really chaotic as everybody tried to attack, and they hadn't played with their powers yet. And, well, my buddy Robert, he fired an ice knife into a crowd. And fun fact for our listeners who don't know the spells and the mechanics of the 5e, an ice knife will hit an individual target. Even if it doesn't hit the individual target, it will then explode for a 5-foot area damage. Yep, which means that if your friends are fighting a single monster and you throw an ice knife in the middle, duck.
Like, hitting your friend too.
Yep, people are targets of opportunity. So then quickly this easy encounter just spirals out of control, and it really made me reassess the rest of the first part of that quest, because they had to go through 3 encounters. So like I hadn't even built that as part of the encounter. I just thought that this would be a fun way to get them up and enticed into a battle, because they've got to enter a town. So they wake up, they've got these things rummaging through their stuff, then they hear stuff in the distance. They're encouraged to go to the town.
Right. Okay.
It was an adventure, buddy. It was an adventure in all the best ways, because it's really fun to be able to throw curveballs at people.
Oh yeah. Oh, totally.
At one point, I think we had a fun part where, one of our members, Robert, as a matter of fact, again, used his persuasion and charm to talk to these people who should be guarding the riverbank looking for his party, essentially. So they sneak up, and he whispers into the guy's ear by sending a message. He's like, "You guys are hungry. You need to go eat." And I was like, Yeah, I'll allow it. They turn around and go. You know what? They never saw you. It's like your conscience is speaking. It's a fun way to avoid that encounter. By all means, go ahead, guys.
That is cool. No, totally. I mean, and yeah, so you're getting a little bit of a taste of what it's like when your players bring these like totally off the wall like solutions to these problems.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. It makes DMing. I mean, DMing is hard. It's a lot of prep and everything, but it makes it totally worth it when you're when your players come in and they're just invested and they come up with these creative solutions. It's so much fun.
I agree. I've been listening to a bunch of podcasts about like intro DMing, and one of the things they said was, you know what? Do voices, have fun, bring energy, because that'll encourage
totally.
your party members, your adventurers, to feel more comfortable doing the same. You know, like
Exactly.
And I was like,
Exactly.
okay, so it's like I really kind of enjoy that because, you know, you being my DM know that I love improvising. I love bending the rules. I love finding the ways I can skirt. So when people present that to me as a DM, I'm like, yeah, roll it. Let's see what happens, you know?
Yeah, let's go with it. Yeah. That's awesome.
So it's been pretty fun. I got to limit how much I want to hurt people on a roll 1, you know? So like I try to cut down damage and stuff, but I still want them to have parts where they're like, you know, encouraged to try different things. So it's like, you know, I will use that to herd them.
Yeah. No, and it's a learning curve, right? So I mean, my first time DMing, I think it was a TPK. The second time, or at least our first major campaign.
I told my buddy about that. I just drove at the dragon, like that Rain of Fire thing with Matthew McConaughey, and then it worked out just like that because the dragon ate me.
well, not even that, but like the campaign before when Ryan ended up cutting off his toe with a nat 1. So, it's just like, okay, maybe that was a little brutal because then I took away 5 feet of his movement, you know, like, and he was already a dwarf, so he was down to 20 movement. Like,
but it did lead to Dad coming in with a golden toe that he had made to mock the fact that he had lost a toe, and that kind of role playing, you know what? That's a bonus inspiration. Way to go! I love it.
Yeah.
So how have you been? What you been up to lately?
Oh man, Jeffrey, my life has been consumed with Tears of the Kingdom.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did the kingdom fall? Like, why are you? Oh, you mean the Zelda game?
The new Zelda game. No, it took me 6 years, Jeffrey, but I did end up beating all the Zelda games.
Beautiful.
And so now this new one comes out, and I'm like, okay, I have to beat this one now to keep that up. I can't say that I beat all the Zelda games anymore until I beat this one. So I put maybe 15 to 20 hours into this game since it came out. Today is currently May 27th, so it's been out for what, a little over 2 weeks or so. Yeah, it came out the 12th, I think. So so I haven't been playing it a lot, but pretty much all my free time I'm thinking about this game. At least if not playing it, I'm thinking about it.
Now the graphics look beautiful, but it's almost, to me, I wanted to ask you how it is, because it almost looks a little overwhelmingly good in graphics. Because me as an amateur Nintendo player, I'm used to the over-top screen Zelda 1, played that a billion times.
Oh, well, of course.
Never really played much else.
If you're comparing it to the old Zelda games, yeah, I mean, these graphics are very good. I would almost argue that what was it? Twilight Princess was a little better.
See, I don't even remember that one. I remember, what was it? The Ocarina of Time. That had some fun graphics.
Of course, yeah.
And that was to me a little bit more of how this gameplay looks, where you're doing more, the quests are expansive.
Yeah, they almost take a slightly like cell shaded route in this one, so it's almost like a little cartoony, but not nearly as much as Wind Waker was on the GameCube.
Okay.
But I mean, if you're considering the other types of video games that are coming out right now, these graphics are really garbage. Like, really. They're not great. It's on the Switch. The hardware on the Switch is not great. It's very dated at this point. They should have waited for this Zelda game to come out on the Switch 2, if that's ever coming out. I have no idea. But, yeah, the hardware is not great. But, I mean, it's still, for what it is, the graphics are very pleasant, very beautiful. You know, you look at a mountain, you can climb it. It's not like there's some magical barrier in the way that prevents you from getting there.
Oh, cool. Like, okay. So it's a little bit like Skyrim in the fact that if you can see it, you can touch it.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, totally. Yeah. And then it's, I guess you've never played Breath of the Wild, but it's
like maybe about, like, for the people who are listening and not watching on our YouTube channel, I am holding my fingers about an inch apart, maybe about this much, much.
The gameplay is very similar, but then there are just these new powers that you get that just change the dynamic of the game entirely. So it's oh man, it's like Breath of the Wild, but like times 2.
Nice.
It's
To say
maybe
selfish
even
promotion on Nintendo's point. Like I feel like one of the beautiful things about Nintendo as a concept is the graphics are always meant to be cartoonish, meant to be more
yeah,
amenable to
right,
people. But to me, that makes the gameplay even more entertaining at times because they focus more on the mechanics, the story, the backside,
exactly. Yep.
and you get a bit more of a well-polished gameplay in my mind because I've played a lot of different games that really just like I think lean on the graphics more than anything else. It's like, yeah, look, it looks
Exactly.
cool, but
Yep.
like I want to be engrossed. I want to be sucked
Right.
into this world, you know?
Yeah. And that really does that. This game does that for me.
Nice.
At least for me it does. Yeah, like I said, it's huge and there's just so many little things you can do. It's like, yes, there's this main quest. You can go do that. But hey, I mean, this guy's trying to hold up a sign. Why don't you try to rig together some kind of little thing to hold up that sign? And like, it's little stuff like that. It's silly. It sounds silly, but it's like, it might take like a couple minutes and it's just like, you feel so accomplished when you do it. And it's like, yes, I did a thing. And, yeah, it's just so cool. I could go on forever, but about that. But this podcast is not about Zelda or video games, but rather this is a podcast about Drizzt. And so let's go ahead and get started with this podcast. We'll jump into
Well, then hit him with the
Drizzt.
backhand and keep him to Drizzt.
The Drizzt. It's the part of the show where we take a look at this week's chapter and we give you the Drizzt of it. So, before we get into this week, let's talk a little bit about last week. So we ended last chapter with a decent cliffhanger. The Drow patrols attacked a gnoming party, if you will, that got just a little too close to the edge of Menzoberranzan, which led to Drizzt nearly single-handedly fighting a rock elemental, with the help of Gwen eventually, while most of the other Drow chased after the fleeing gnomes.
Fun fact, when you look at the vocabulary and how to say things into the radio, when you tried to say that, what I hear is, people at home, try this with me, gnome mining. Now, say it quick. No mining. No mining party. So no, yeah, I appreciate the fact that you went away around it because it sounds like if you say it quickly that there was no mining going on at all.
Well, by the end of it, there was definitely no mining going on. The chapter ended with Massage half melded into the rock floor, and Drizzt getting knocked out cold by the rock-hard fist of Belwar Disengulp.
One for the champ. Well, I guess they're both champ. Never mind. Let it go. They're both doing great.
I mean, quite the cliffhanger there. So, knowing all that, let's jump into this chapter. This chapter starts with Massage explaining to Dinan and the High Priestess that Drizzt was taken by the gnomes. Drizzt is nowhere to be found at the beginning of this chapter. The High Priestess releases Massage from the spell. I guess it wasn't really a spell. It was more like he was just stuck in the rock, and this rock portal was closing up like underneath him, right?
Yeah, because what is it? They explain that the earth elemental travels between planes by falling in it.
Right.
So he was essentially like falling into the plane that the earth elemental goes to, and then caught because the earth elemental was gone.
Yep, just kind of like trapped between planes, like whoa. But the High Priestess releases
Do you think his
him.
like little feet were dangling from the other plane for a while? It's like running.
What would that look like in the rock plane?
They look up like, oh, there's another set of feet.
So the High Priestess releases him from that by basically turning the rock into mud with some kind of spell. This seemed to be a very common solution that the Drow had to the gnomes' rock-based magic. But, it just seemed like something that was common. She said something about like, well, here we go. Like, luckily I prepared this. This is something that, I don't know.
Now, that was what I found interesting. I was going to bring up. What she says is, you were lucky I prepared this spell. But then she goes on to say she prepared it knowing or in anticipation of an earth elemental. And what really tickled my mind was, sure, spell pull the guy out of the ground, right? But is she trying to use this magic against the rock itself, as an earth elemental is made of rock? And if so, would that spell have turned this giant, sturdy stone slab individual into muck? how would that affect the magic that holds together the earth elemental? It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, depending on how that spell works, I mean, could
Like,
you turn
I don't
that
have
rock
their
elemental?
spell, but like we'll look at that spell a little bit better. But that's what makes me wonder. Like, I don't know how that would have worked if you were like, 'cause are they coming in like knowing that they're gonna they might face earth elementals, and instead of using it in this manner, would have casted it directly at the earth elemental?
The rock elemental is now a mud elemental.
Right. Would that have stopped it, or would it have looked like Clayface from the Batman animated series? You know, like where are we going with it?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Like, would it have increased the rock element or the earth elemental speed because it could slide?
So Massage gets out of his rocky tomb, and then Dinan demands that Massage bring out Guinevere to hunt down the gnomes that kidnapped Drizzt, because there's no sign of them at this point.
Yep.
Massage, I mean, and like thinking about it, the last time Massage saw Gwen was when Gwen got like destroyed by this rock elemental. And so it's like he's just kind of like, no, I can't do that. And Dinan's like, yes, you can. You're gonna do it right now, or like you're dead, basically. And
we'll put you right back in the mud.
Right, exactly. And so Massage is just like, not knowing if Gwen is even alive, tosses the figurine to the ground, and Guinevere's okay.
Nice.
Which is like, seems like a pretty overpowered item.
It does.
Basically.
But
like,
it also, to me, strikes out like, how dumb is Massage? Just because this is your most valued possession and you don't understand how it works. You are, in fact, a sorcerer, a wizard. Like you deal with magic. So why do you not know if the panther's okay? Why have you waited this long to find out if damage on this plane affects the panther in the other plane? Like,
but
you know
at the same time, I do kind of get it though, because like this is a really cool thing, and the last thing you would want to do is accidentally kill Gwen, and then all of a sudden you don't have it anymore, you know?
Right. Like there goes your ice cream cone right on the ground.
Right.
Watch it melt. It's Menzo Berenson. You're not getting ice cream again. Where are they going to get the cows to milk? That's a special treat.
So Massage instructs Gwen to go find Drizzt, and she bounds off. Meanwhile, Drizzt was just coming around from his encounter with Belwar's fist. You remember, he was knocked out cold, right?
Yep.
Drizzt awoke to a group of gnomes that were conversing in a language that Drizzt had never heard before. Eventually, Belwar turns around to Drizzt and informs him that he will be taken to Blingdenstone, the gnome. Was it a capital, or at least a gnome city?
Yeah, it's a major gnome city. I know that. I'm not sure if it's the capital kingdom, but I would imagine something.
Right.
I know it probably says it, but yeah.
Yeah. From there, Belwar planned to tell the king to let Drizzt go as long as Drizzt behaved for them. Drizzt, of course, was unconvinced that he was going to be released, and so he just, like, to that, he just laughed. He just laughed, like, when he's like, yeah, these evil gnomes are going to just, like, take me to their city and then just release me.
Right, like, what are you doing? Just trying to keep me quiet? You think I'm going to buy this? Yeah, sure.
Right, yeah. And Belwar's eventually said, well, if the king... I have this in quotes, which means I need to do my gnome voice. Sorry.
Hit it.
So Belwar said, well, if the king says to kill you, I'll make sure it comes in a single clean blow. That was a really, I don't know. I
like
practice
it. See, folks, this is what we get as having a DM. We get voices.
If your voice isn't, if your DM isn't doing the voices, what is he even doing?
Not voices.
To this statement, of course, like, this is the title of the chapter, right? The single clean blow. Drizzt then says, torture me now and have your fun. That is your evil way. Belwar was quick to retort that the gnomes do not torture. The Drow elves torture.
He was, like, insulted when he said it, too, because he's like, gnomes don't torture. Drow torture.
Right.
It's like...
Yeah, which...
wow, okay.
Yeah, and this whole time, Drizzt was brought up, like, the gnomes are evil. I mean, everything's evil other than the Drow, right?
All
so
of
it's
it.
like...
Yep.
Right, and so at this point, it's like, Drizzt is like, wait, what?
Yeah, it's almost like when Charlie Brown goes to kick the football and Lucy pulls it away, right? He's been taught time and time again, everyone around them is evil. And the fact is, the only reason the Drow themselves are evil is because they've had to be so evil to fight all the other evil just to survive. And then he meets the surface elves, and they're melodic, they're beautiful. The surface looks great. Wait, these are nice people? All right, well, you know what? Whatever. Let's go get these gnomes.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. The gnomes don't torture? What? Every time he thinks he's going to be able to put his finger on something and hold to that like Drow code, he's like, wait, that's not right. And it's just another example.
Yep. Drizzt believes him quickly, Drizzt believes him and quickly started becoming interested in these creatures that he had never had a chance to interact with before. I guess like they didn't have. He never met a gnome before. Svirfneblin. Sorry, I didn't actually like write it down.
I believe it's Svirfnebli.
Something like that.
Maybe when they're in more than one. Svirfneblin as an individual.
So they don't have those gnomes as slaves in Menzoberranzan because they don't make good slaves. I remember reading that at some point. I forget if I actually typed that in or not. So
later in the chapter, they hit that because they're like, well, we could take them back. And he's like, they don't make good slaves.
Yeah. And so this is his first interaction with one before. And he's just like, oh, like, I mean, he's buying into it real quickly. Just like, oh, yeah, I mean, I'm alive, basically. Like, I should have been dead. Like, what are you doing? You're not torturing me. You're letting me live. Yeah. So he believes them pretty quickly. And just gets interested in these creatures. Just like, who actually are you? Drizzt learns that there was once a drow in Blingdenstone, not a slave, because, oh, yeah, there I go. They don't have slaves. No, that was the other way. So these Svirfneblin don't have slaves at all. But instead, this drow in Blingdenstone was a guest. And this drow went on to teach the gnomes how to speak the language of the drow, which is why Belwar was able to speak to Drizzt. He was able to speak to Drizzt.
Now, fun fact about Blingdenstone, with the fact that there was a drow guest, Blingdenstone itself used to be a drow settlement back in the day. It was liberated from the drow by the Svirfneblin. It was the Pudding King. What? Yeah, the Pudding King and Jublex were driven out, and then Ogre Mock's Bane was cleansed of corruption. Yeah, I had to look into it a little bit because I was like, like I know in the future books this gets touched on, as far as Drow in the city a little bit more because not giving that away, but want to look at the past, and evidently before the gnomes went to live there, it was a Drow settlement, cavern, whatever you want to call it. They lived there. The gnomes took it from them. So that also might have something to do with the hatred that the Drow have towards the deep gnomes.
Oh, man, there's so much there. That's so cool. No, I had no idea. So before Drizzt could learn too much about the gnomes, there came a commotion from behind. The Drow patrol caught up. Before the gnomes could prepare, Belwar and another gnome were paralyzed by the High Priestess. The other gnomes slaughtered. I mean, I guess some of them did get away. Drizzt was completely horrified as he watched these gnomes fall.
It had to be really kind of like it was a neat way to explain that free spell too, because it paused right in the middle of his writing. Like when he was writing, he's like, and then they just stopped too still. I was like, what? What's going on? Oh, and you automatically knew something was wrong before they even told you the Drow Patrol had caught up. It was cool. I liked that.
Yeah. Even as captors, the gnomes seemed more reasonable than Drizzt's immediate family, or were at least very intriguing to him, right? So, like as captors, he was very intrigued by them. They weren't like immediately whipping him and all this stuff. But then the Drow come in, and the High Priestess gave orders to kill the last two gnomes, the gnomes that were frozen in place.
Yep, right away, too. Didn't even hesitate.
Oh yeah, no hesitation. Just like they're frozen, they're helpless. Kill them.
Right, with a little smile, like
right.
Kill them.
And Drizzt, trying to prevent their death, yells, "Prisoners!" But his plea falls on deaf ears, meaning like one of the gnomes gets stabbed, like, and is still frozen when he gets stabbed, so he can't even react to it. He's just like gets stabbed and dies.
And it's they talk about the spell. The gnomes are they feel everything. They're conscious. Right. They're cognizant. They're just frozen in place. She says, I believe, that even now he is struggling to break free of the spell. Like, oh, that's terrifying.
Wild. So Belwar was the last gnome standing, and Drizzt had to think quickly. We should send them back to his people. Send him back to tell of their folly in entering the domain of the Drow. The high priestess bought it. But then she ordered that Belwar's hands be cut off because, Drow are just ruthless.
Yeah. I mean, what's the worst thing you could do to an individual whose passion in life is spent mining gems from rock? Take their hands.
Yeah. Wild. Absolutely wild. And, well, I'll be getting into that more. So Dinan orders that Belwar be released from the spell before he is relieved of his hands. He wants to...
Of his hands. Yeah, those hands are such a burden.
So he wants to hear his screams, basically, is the reason why he wants him released. But Belwar does not give him the pleasure of screaming. Which
Boss move.
Could you imagine doing that? Just like the blades cut through his wrists, and he's just like,
no.
Like how was it explained? It was like just the nerve endings are just like on fire, and he's just like, nope.
It's like his hatred towards the Drow and the position he's in is so pure that he just uses that to override any pain that comes in. Like, even if this will be his death, he will not give them the last laugh. He will not give them the pleasure. Like, beast.
Like, I've been driving to work. It's about like 50 minutes, and I've been having some knee pain. And after sitting in the car for about 50 minutes, my knee it hurts so bad. And just like, I grimace just standing up out of the car is just like, ugh. And I'm like, man, if someone cut my leg off.
Yeah, I was going to say, bro, I stub a toe and I go down like a heap yelling out oaths and curses. Like, oh, just sounding horrible. Can't get, here's
But if someone cut your toe off, like, oh man, like that would be so much worse. And to not be like, to try to hold back any kind of tears or yelling, like crazy.
Yeah, I just imagine him with this stone face when it happens, just looking straight at him like.
So that happens. He loses his hands. He doesn't yell. And about that time, the rest of the Drow patrol return. Well, I guess Belwar was allowed to leave at that point. It wasn't highlighted too much, but he was allowed to leave. And the rest of the Drow patrol return and inform Dinan that the gnomes got away. I mean, they escaped through tiny passages, too small for the Drow to fit through. And yeah.
What I found interesting there was he said that he was fine with Belwar leaving. He's like, but having deep gnomes that are full health leaving, just not acceptable. Interesting. You know what I mean? Because it's like they weren't hurt, they weren't stabbed, they weren't, they're fully healthy. They're gonna have, little gnomekins and that can come back and dig again.
That's unacceptable.
Yep.
That is interesting. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. I mean, at that point, it's just like, well, kill Belwar and let the others run off. Like, they'll send a message, even if they still have their hands. But yeah. So Massage sent Gwen after them, after those gnomes that escaped. After a few minutes, Gwen returned with a dead gnome. Seeing his cat friend engaged in such tactics, Drizzt's blood pressure started to rise. He didn't like the way that Massage was using her. He could also see in her eyes that she was also saddened by this situation, as she apologized to Drizzt with her saucer eyes. Just like, he could tell that she wasn't enjoying this, but she had to follow orders. Massage was the one that was holding the statue, the little figurine. And so whatever he said, she had to do. But Drizzt could tell she wasn't on board with it either.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's a heck of a way to end that chapter, too. I mean, it just kind of leaves you there really with like your heart on the floor a little bit, like right in the emotions.
Yep. Totally. Awesome. So that's my summary. That's my The Drizzt. Let's talk about our favorite parts in the Dim Light Reel.
The dim light reel is where we cast darkness on our favorite parts of the chapter. And dim light, all our favorite characters, events, descriptions, and more. For me, my dim light reel, I wanted to look right at the end of the chapter where we just left off and how Massage chose to use Guinevere. Or in my own terms, to misuse Guinevere.
Yeah.
Deanan has just realized that there was way too many, again, for the people listening, you're not going to see the air quotes I do here, but way too many healthy members of the Gnome expedition that had escaped, and it didn't really sit well with him. He turned to his raiding party and said, "I want them caught." To which Massage quickly replied, "Guinevere can catch them," while eyeing Drizzt the whole time.
Oh, no.
Right? He's just like smug little
Just like,
jerk.
he knows exactly how he can get at Drizzt. And he's just like, this I can do. And yeah, oh man.
And Drizzt's heart raced as he watched Massage pet the great cat, getting ready to send it on its way. He says, "Come, my pet," Massage said. "There is hunting left to be done." And I find it interesting that Salvatore writes, "The wizard watched Drizzt squirm at the words, knowing that Drizzt did not approve of Guinevere engaging in such tactics. Like Massage had just been rescued by Drizzt killing the Earth Elemental. He had to use his panther in order to track down and save Drizzt, and now that he lays eyes on him again, the first thing he wants to do is make him as uncomfortable as possible. He volunteers to send the cat without anyone even suggesting it. And like every other time we see this, it's Deanan who's like basically pressing him. "You will use the cat."
Yep.
This time he's like, hey, I got a cat. We can use my cat. The cat gets him, right?
Oh man.
And it just kind of like turns the screws a little harder into Drizzt's feelings. Drizzt quickly tries to reason and asks if they're gone. His voice is on the edge of desperation, and Deanan calmly replies, "Running all the way to Blingdenstone if we let them." And it's clear that the Deep Gnomes will not return anytime soon. The damage that they took is far too high of a cost. So Drizzt here he is trying to reason that their job is done. He's doing everything he can to try to find a way out of Massage's designs for Guinevere. "We have won the day," Deanan agreed. "Though our losses have been great, we may still find more fun with the help of the wizard's pet." And Massage looks pointedly at Drizzt as he echoes the statement. "Fun. Begone, Guinevere. Into the tunnels. Let us learn how fast a frightened gnome may run." Ugh. Yeah, I was just like, you just Massage deserves to be turned into the faceless one over and over and over again. Not to become the faceless one, just to have the process done.
Just to lose his face.
Yes.
Over and over and over. I love it.
Take his face, heal that man, take it again. A few minutes later, Guinevere came back into the chamber, dragging a dead gnome in its mouth. "Return," Massage commanded as the body of the gnome fell at his feet. "Bring me more." Drizzt's heart dropped at the sound of the corpse flopping to the stone floor. That is such a disheartening line. The corpse flopping to the stone floor.
You can hear it.
Like in my head, yes, yeah. It's such a great way to describe the events. It's like Salvatore already paints a picture where Drizzt's heart is heavy at the thought of Guinevere being used as an assassin, just a mindless killing machine to track down the gnomes, who, it turns out, aren't as evil as he thought they were. But the term flopping just gives it more of like a pitiable feeling to this act, this whole charade in front of it.
And you can hear Drizzt's heart flopping.
Yeah, just
at the
sound to the stone floor. Drizzt looked into Guinevere's eyes and he saw a sadness as profound as his own. The panther was a hunter, as honorable in its own way as was Drizzt. To the evil Massage, though, Guinevere's a mere toy and nothing more. It's an instrument for his perverted pleasures, killing for no reason other than its master's joy of killing. In the hands of the wizard, Guinevere was no more than a murderer. Guinevere paused at the entrance to the small tunnel and looked to Drizzt almost apologetically. There have been several times that Drizzt has looked into the eyes of Guinevere and seen emotions that he can relate to. A kindred spirit inside of this large cat. This time, We see that Guinevere doesn't like being used in this manner any more than Drizzt likes seeing her be used. Or, I mean, is this an echo of his own emotions? Is this an example of Drizzt projecting his thoughts onto the Panther? Yeah. I don't believe so. I mean, I don't believe so.
Well, yeah. I mean, it just makes me think, like, that just reminded me of how we do kind of put emotions into our pets.
Mm-hmm.
Into our dogs, into our cats. It's just like it at least seems like we know what they're feeling, right?
Yep.
Like
there's a term for it, and I never remember it. But I always think of the Bee movie with Jerry Seinfeld playing the voice of the bee.
Oh, man.
And they make this whole, movie about this colony, and they have feelings, and they do these things, and they have these jobs. And it's like, that's a human construct that we then put onto the bees to explain what they do. It's not necessarily what the bees do at all. And it's like, there's a term for it, and I can never remember it. But that's what I was looking for here, is it's like, is Drizzt looking at the cat, and it's like, he is so profoundly sad that he sees those eyes look at him, and he's like, I see that sadness in you. Or is it really there?
Right.
For me, I think it's really there. Like, I think that that Drizzt is finely tuned to the emotions, to the mindset, like the characteristics of his friend, and can sense how wrong of an act this is to use such a fine fighter as something lower than a simple butcher. The key part of this chapter to me is, in my opinion, is that Massage understands that Drizzt has a connection to the Panther. And even though he hasn't been able to use her against him physically, he delights in being able to use her against him emotionally.
Oh, man. That's totally true. Ugh.
And he goes, "Return!" Massage screamed, and he kicked the cat in the rear. Then Massage turned an eye back on Drizzt, a vindictive eye. Massage had missed the chance to kill the young Do'Urden. He would have to be careful how he explained such a mistake to his unforgiving mother. Massage decided to worry about that unpleasant encounter later. For now, at least, he had the satisfaction of watching Drizzt suffer. Dinan and the others were oblivious to the unfolding drama between Massage and Drizzt, too engaged in their wait for Guinevere's return, too engaged in their speculations of the expressions of terror that the gnomes would cast back at such an efficient killer, too caught up in the macabre humor of the moment, that perverted drow humor that brought laughter when tears were needed. Just another shocking example of how insidious the drow can be. How even the things that put a smile on their face bring fear and sorrow to what we'd consider a well-adjusted individual. Just such a haunting way to end a chapter, especially considering that Drizzt was saved.
This was a happy occasion.
Yeah, this should be like a feeling of relief, of celebration, of joy. Instead, it's just more macabre.
Right. Yeah. And, I mean, that kind of goes into my dim light. I don't know if you have anything more you want to add to yours.
No, I think that's about the encapsulation of it.
So, with my dim light, this week it speaks a lot to Drizzt's character, but it also kind of comes off of that idea that, like, it should have been a feeling of relief and joy, but instead it was just kind of like, well, is this better than what it was before? And just like, because I want to talk about the whole idea that
I don't want to step on the toes of yours too much, but it really does make you think, does Drizzt believe he'd have been better off not being rescued?
Right. And exactly. That's what I want to get into a little bit here. So earlier in this chapter, we found Drizzt captured by a company of gnomes. And as the reader, it appeared that Drizzt's situation was pretty dire. But later on, we kind of figure like, oh, would that have been so bad? And so even though Belwar was saying that he would ask the gnome king,
it makes me laugh just because I'm thinking of, like, when you think about a cliffhanger, right? Fantasy wise, Lord of the Rings, Frodo at the end of the book stabbed by Shelob, you think he's dead.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
But never, ever, 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 ever do you question whether or not Frodo would have been better going with the spider.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But here it's like, like these evil gnomes. Yeah, like, no, Drizzt should not go with the evil gnome. Oh, wait, maybe he should have.
Yeah.
So, we Belwar was telling Drizzt, like, hey, look, I mean, as long as you're good, like, I'll ask the king to release you. But that seemed pretty unlikely. Like, especially, like, considering, like, why even take him back to Blingdenstone at that point? Why wouldn't Belwar just be like, okay, like, go?
No, and it's not even that. Like what you say there raises a great point to me. Like if he's going to set him free, why are they going back to Blingdenstone? Why not just kill him?
Right.
Why
exactly.
not kill him right there, like they did all the other Drow that tried to invade the patrol?
Exactly.
Unless they mean to make a statement or an example out of Drizzt. Like I think that's what he's got to be feeling right away.
Okay, maybe.
You know what I mean? But it's like,
yeah,
when you think about it, like, look, bro. I guess you can call a Drow, bro. Like, look, bro. Sure. You're still alive. Like, you shouldn't be. He had a chance to just, you just knocked down an earth elemental. You did all this crap. And he had you dead to rights, but instead decided to make you a prisoner. So that's got to at least buy him some sort of trust from Drizzt. I think when he says that, he trusts him quickly, like you mentioned in the chapter, I think that might be the impetus that makes him be like, well, maybe.
Yeah. So even though it wasn't looking great for Drizzt, he was intrigued by these gnomes, like I said before, especially by Belwar's statements that made the gnomes appear opposite of how the Drow perceived them. Like, they don't have slaves, they don't torture anyone, those type of things. So at a certain point, Drizzt really didn't feel much like a captive. He saw that the gnomes were not the evil creatures that he was brought up to believe, and he didn't seem totally against the idea of getting stolen from Menzoberranzan. He was just kind of like, okay, kind of like squinty-eyed, looking, side-eye, like looking at him, just like, what's going on here? I don't know. And so like it kind of like started out very much like, oh man, Drizzt is captured, blah, blah, blah. But then it's like, not so much. And then it just goes, there's a 180-degree shift because eventually the Drow patrol catch up. And I mean, it just puts, like I said, a 180-degree shift on the whole situation. The Drow slaughtered all the gnomes that weren't able to flee immediately. They froze or paralyzed Belwar and another gnome in place. And so, like, here we got to objectively see the brutality of the Drow against the gnomes.
I love that line.
Gnomes,
that's a good line.
Like, the gnomes were defending themselves when the Drow first attacked, but then they fled, right? And what did the Drow do? The Drow chased after them. Eventually the gnomes got away, and yet the Drow they're not taking prisoners. They're just coming in and they're just slaughtering to slaughter. The gnomes did take one prisoner at least. Did they have to? I don't know. But they did at least try to take Drizzt as a prisoner.
Yeah, and I mean, you get the feeling, though, that even if they hadn't taken Drizzt as a prisoner, they were just trying to flee. I mean, they only killed in order to disengage and leave.
At least that's what it seemed like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lost my place here. Here we go. Where the gnomes were going to allow Drizzt to live, at least for the time being, the Drow were going to slaughter even the most helpless gnomes without even hesitating. They froze two of them. They were going to kill them right away. Drizzt could not bear this. When the High Priestess ordered the Drow warrior to kill the paralyzed gnomes, Drizzt fought for their lives. First he tries, hey, let's make them slaves. And then, well, they don't make good slaves. And also, that's not brutal enough. So then the one died, and then he tries, hey, let's send one back, and, he can just send a message to the rest of the gnomes that, hey, the Drow are super brutal, and you shouldn't go that close to Menzoberranzan again. Of course, that was only acceptable if Belwar didn't have his hands anymore. So, just insane.
Yeah, I mean,
it's crazy how
you think about it.
Again and again, we get these tastes of just how brutal the Drow are.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, to me, the only reason that Dinan wasn't comfortable with the healthy gnomes running back is because, they're going to spread the message, right? But they're going to spread their message. When I cut off Belwar's hands and I send him back, he can say whatever he wants, but they're all going to look at him missing his hands and know every time they see him go get the meal at the cafeteria, every time he goes to the common market to have a drink or whatever, they know without a doubt, Drow, remove your hands. Do not go near Drow. This is what happens.
There's a physical message that he cannot hide.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, just that's the level of... Not petty. Petty's the wrong word, but like that's the level of their insidious nature where they're just like, they've got a message, but let me write my own message. Like,
man,
taking it too far.
So I just loved this turn of events from Drizzt is in this horrible situation to, okay, Drizzt is safe, but he's still kind of in this horrible situation.
Yeah, it's amazing, but you put it like that, you're absolutely right. Like, out of the frying pan and into the other frying pan that's actually on. Crap.
Yeah, exactly. So I also just feel like it speaks a lot to Drizzt's character to be put in that initial situation, at least the initial part of the initial situation where it's like he's a prisoner, he's most likely going to die, and yet once there's a change in the tides, Drizzt remains true to his values and still fights for the lives of those gnomes. It would have been so easy for Drizzt just to be like, hey, you were going to take me back to your city and have me killed, most likely, so let's just kill him. Like, it would have been so easy for him to do that, but he obviously has this a value for life, especially for ones that he perceives as being not evil, and in first interacting with these gnomes, they did not seem evil to him.
Yeah, and it's quick too, right? Because when he's looking at these gnomes and they're going through the whole thing, he doesn't believe them, right? Because he knows they're evil. Like, oh, you're not going to do that. You're not going to do that. But he is facing his death with the honor and the bravery required of a warrior of his status. This is how he looks at it. Like, if you take me, then you take me. I'm not begging for a thing. Like, go ahead, let's do this. I know what you're doing. Don't lie to me.
Yeah.
And then it quickly dawns on him, like, you're not the ones who've been lying to me.
Yeah.
Huh. And then when he gets saved, you see him, he's just like you said, it's not maybe not innocent is the wrong word, like the value of innocent life, but it is. It's that value of non-evil life, right? Like the elves, the gnomes now, where he sees it and he's like, well, I'm not needlessly taking life. Like, he has no problem killing a hook horror that's trying to invade the city and kill all the people, right? He had no problems coming out to get the gnomes when he thought they were just like the hook horrors. But as soon as he realizes that they have their own conscious approach, that they have their own culture, their own feelings, their own emotions, and they are not what he's been told, he's like, well, no, then why should I kill them?
Right.
Like, no.
They're no threat to me.
Yep.
Like,
well, they're no threat to us either. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we're the threat to them. Like,
yeah. It's like they stepped a little close to her, but I mean, they're just getting gems. Like, they're not here to kill us. Like,
that's what we learned from Belwar's point of view in the last chapter. It's like, the gnomes didn't say, hey, you know what, let's go invade Menzo Barons. And they were just like, look, we found gems. And it's like, it's in a really dangerous place. So that what they did was they didn't create tunnels for launching assaults. They didn't create tunnels for counterattacks.
Right. It was all defensive.
And to flee.
It was all defensive.
Save life.
Yep.
It's like just that dichotomy or the juxtaposition of how, like, the two people look at it from different angles like that is, that's beautiful. I thought you did a great job of pointing that out.
Totally. All right. So that's my dim light for this week. We went through yours. Jeffrey, I think it's about time for us to jump into the Dungeon Delve.
All right. Well, let me get my miner's pack. Let me get my engineering pack. Put a little cap on. I don't need to turn the light on, though, because we have infravision.
Oh, totally.
Yep. Let's dive on into the Dungeon Delve. This is the part of the show where we link this chapter to our favorite tabletop role-playing game. In this chapter, we found out what happened to Massage after Drizzt had been gnome-napped.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Love it.
He was stuck in the rock. And then along came a priestess of Lulth, and she did some cool magic that turned the ground into mud and allowed them to free him. And, you know, when I started looking into a bit of research, what I came up with is called transmute rock.
Interesting.
Now, I got this from D&D Beyond Wiki. So if this is a homebrew, I apologize. It was not listed as
Well,
such.
I mean, homebrew's fine. Homebrew's fine.
No, they are.
As long as
I
we-
like to tell
yeah.
people I know it's a homebrew. This was presented as a spell, but it was also written out, so it wasn't really like stat blocked 5e page, etc., etc.
Oh, gotcha.
So it
yeah.
very well might be a homebrew, but I think it fits pretty well. So the first thing that jumps out to me is that this is a 5th level transmutation spell, which makes sense because you would expect it to be a little higher since it's used by a full trained priestess, not some amateur.
Sure.
Takes a full action to cast. It's got a range of 120 feet, and it makes up a 40-foot cube. It's a little large, but
That's pretty
40-foot
big.
cube. It's huge. The save for this spell would be a dex save. There's also a strength save that they built into it, trying to pull yourself out of it. But
Okay.
to avoid being encaptured by the spell would be a dex save, which would then be based on the wizard who casts it in their spell save level. Why a spell save? Well, because this spell isn't used in the way it's used in the book. That doesn't mean it can't be. One of the things that I love about
Right.
R.A. Salvatore and how he writes is that he takes D&D tropes and stands them on their heads sometimes.
Oh yeah.
You know, like what I mean is he uses things in different ways than they appear to be intended.
Yeah, I love that. That's one of my favorite things about
Yeah.
the way that my players interpret spells. They'll use them in crazy ways. In fact, we'll talk more about that.
No, absolutely. And to me, it's one of the things that, sucked me in right away. And,
Yep.
later books, I have one succinct moment in mind, but we're talking books from now.
Books.
So I don't really want to get that one. But, the way he tends to be like, well, this spell is a fireball and you can use it as an attack. Or I can use it
Right.
to light a bonfire and heat my food.
Right.
There's just other ways to
Or
use
just
it
like
than what
fireworks, you know?
Yes. So this spell, it's going to transmute non-magical rock of any sort into an equal volume of thick, flowing mud that creatures can sink into. A creature makes a saving throw when you cast it on the ground around it, or when it enters that ground, or if it ends its turn in that area. So when a creature sinks into the mud, it's restrained. The fun part is, it mentions if you cast the spell on a ceiling, well, then the mud falls. And any creature, yeah,
Oh, that's so cool.
any creature under the mud when it falls must make a dex save or take 4d8 bludgeoning damage,
Choo,
or half as
man.
much on a successful save.
Wow.
Yeah. Ironically, I think it's also the same spell that would put massage in the ground, because you can also use it to transmutate quicksand or mud into soft stone. And then a creature would make a
interesting.
dex save or become restrained. The rock will have an AC of 15 and 25 hit points they give it. So
Okay.
if they wanted to break out massage, it would have taken a little bit it would have taken a little bit. And, rolling a 1 while trying to free someone,
Oh, yeah, that might not be the best.
it could go poorly, especially if you have sharp instruments trying to remove him from the stone.
Right. Oh, man.
So if you all at home have any fun or interesting ideas to use this spell, please hit up the Discord. Let us know how you'd use the transmutate spell. One idea that I came across was someone who said that they would cast the spell twice. Once to sink someone into the mud, and then again to turn that mud
Oh, that's so cool.
right
That's
back
a
into
good
stone,
idea.
and then the enemy is trapped inside of there. To me, it sounds a bit nightmarish, but
Right.
it's an interesting slant on the mechanics. Now, it has to be non-magical stone, but in theory, I don't think that a regular prison would ever hold you again. You would just cast
Right.
this spell and walk on out.
Yep. Oh man, that's terrifying. That's terrifying. No, I when you started talking about this, I was like, oh man, we got to come up with some creative ways of using this. And my head immediately went to like, what if you cast it on the ceiling? And it's like we talked about that. I was like, come on.
Yeah, and it's like when when I went in to read it, they had comments underneath. So I'm going through, and the author was
nice.
replying to the people's comments, and that's where they came up with like, well, what if you cast it and put it? He goes, well, you'd have to cast it twice, once in and then once to side. And I'm like, oh,
Right.
because then they don't get caught by the waist down; they sink into it, and then you
Right.
turn that into a solid. Oh, good night, they're gone.
Or
Bye.
like but at the same time, like you could almost use it possibly, depending on your character's abilities. Like you could cast it before the enemy sees you and like hide in the mud. Like
Yeah.
use it as like a stealthy way of sneaking up on people or like hiding somewhere. Or
No, that's a good
I don't
idea
know.
because you could be like, what is it, the old Robin Hood cartoon where he was a fox from the Disney thing, and you
Yeah, yeah,
had the
yeah.
little reed in the water. Like as long as you leave yourself a
Right,
breathing hole, that it does specify it is soft stone, so it wouldn't
right.
automatically crush you. As long as you had a
Oh, okay,
breathing
yeah.
apparatus or a way to draw air in, you could hide inside the stone.
Right. So it's soft stone. It's not necessarily mud
Well, no, no,
we
it's
saw in the
into mud,
game
or
or
then the
in
mud
the
goes
book.
into soft stone, or vice versa.
Oh,
You
I
can use
gotcha. I gotcha.
quicksand.
I gotcha. Gotcha. That's very cool. I love spells that allow some interpretation
Yeah.
for you to come up with something creative. I absolutely love that. Let's go ahead and jump into the spell that I want to talk about. It's not quite as versatile, I don't think, but maybe we can come up with a couple ways to use it in creative ways. But I want to talk about the other spell that was used in this chapter, the spell that caused Belwar and the other gnome to freeze in place with almost like a paralysis type of effect. I took a gander through the player's handbook to see if I could find any spells that matched the description of this spell from the chapter, and the best I could come up with was Hold Person.
Which my character in your campaign definitely has as a spell too. Thank you very much.
Nice, nice. I'll keep that in mind and make sure that I don't have any humanoids coming up because
So far, I haven't been able to find a good reason to use it, but I've got it.
So, Hold Person is a second level enchantment spell that casts within one action on one humanoid within 60 feet. It requires a verbal and somatic components along with a small straight piece of iron to cast. It takes
You don't remember, I had to go get a small piece of iron from the blacksmith. He gave me the slag piece because, I was like, hey, do you have anything? And you had him just give me some of the scrap. That's what this was for, was I needed a piece of
Dude.
iron for the spell. Yeah.
That was years ago.
Yeah, because I was like, man, I don't feel like paying for this stuff. You got any spare? You were like, I got like slag. I was like, take it.
Oh my gosh. That was so long ago. That was literally like, oh man, back in 2021 maybe?
It's been a minute.
The spell does take up concentration, so make sure that you're not getting hit like while you're casting the spell, because you could lose concentration and then the target becomes not paralyzed. So once cast, the spell makes the target paralyzed. Paralysis is a condition in which the creature is incapacitated. That means that they cannot take actions. They automatically fail strength and dexterity saving throws. It doesn't say anything about mental, like intelligence or wisdom, so
Because
you're
they're still
thinking.
there, right?
You're still there, right?
Oh.
Exactly. But strength and dexterity, you're not able to physically move, so you're going to fail those. Attacks against them have advantage, and any successful attacks within 5 feet. So basically, like if you're performing a melee attack and you've successfully hit them, it's automatically a critical hit, which means double the damage dice.
So in that moment, when I played the grapple-based monk, one of my favorite ideas was that you can grapple somebody. It's easier to push them, right? Big strength-based monk.
Yep.
So the idea was always you can push them into a fire, you can push them off a cliff. Now with paralysis, if you were to also do that, you telling me that it's automatic double crit if I toss him off a ledge while he's paralyzed? Like he's
I think
he's
it's
gonna
on an
take that
attack.
fall damage too. Like okay,
Well,
okay.
I don't know that the fall damage would be doubled, but any
Because that would
attack
suck.
that you make,
They're paralyzed.
that would
you
be
got you got
horrible.
nothing to do, so I just throw you over the shoulder, walk over, and be like,
Pew. Yeah, I don't know about fall damage being doubled, but your attacks would definitely be double dice. So you might be thinking, this spell isn't the same, it wasn't just one target, there were two. So yeah, don't worry. The Hold Person spell can do that too. All you have to do is cast it at higher levels. You can target another humanoid for each level above level 2. So basically, if you want to target 2 humanoids, just cast as a level 3 spell. Like use a level 3 spell slot. Or if you want to target 3 humanoids, use a level 4 spell slot, and so on. Which is, you could take out quite a bit of humanoids.
yeah.
They do. Oh, you know what? I totally missed that. I didn't write it down here, and my book is closed, but there is a wisdom save involved with this.
Okay.
So in order to become paralyzed, you have to fail on I think it was a wisdom saving throw. If it's wrong, you guys can call me out on it, but I'm pretty sure it was a wisdom saving throw against the caster's spell save DC. But basically, like each one of those targets would have to succeed on or fail or whatever. They would have to roll a wisdom saving throw against the caster's spell DC, and if they fail, then they're paralyzed. And so you could knock out a whole encounter or half of an encounter pretty easily with this spell.
You'd have to be a gory butcher, though, because I mean, you're then going to go up there and drow those held person to death, right? Like,
well, and that's the thing. I mean, that one of the things I wanted to talk about was the versatility of these spells, right? So this one seems like it's pretty simple. Like, you paralyze them, you go up and you kill them. But what are some other out-of-the-box ways you could use this spell? You could totally do that and then go tie him up. Most player characters have rope on hand.
My character has lots of rope. Spent all my gold on rope.
You could very easily take. I didn't put the amount of time that this runs either. I would imagine it's like a minute. It might be more, but I would imagine it's at least.
It's up to 1 minute.
Up to 1 minute.
Mm-hmm. So you have 10 in that case, 10 rounds of action.
Right. So if you are able to cast this on like the last 3 humanoids in the encounter, then take about 30 seconds to quickly run up to them, tie them up, like you could do that pretty effectively to the point where you would end the encounter and have 3 prisoners.
Now,
so
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Say this has it listed as like if you're engaged and already rolled initiative. What if I ambush them? They don't know it's there, and I ambush them with a charm spell, or the hold spell. Do they still get a chance to save? Or would they save at disadvantage? Like, how would that work if they didn't know it was coming? Because this seems to be like me and you are in combat, and then I choose to hold you against your will. Therefore, you get to make a wisdom save.
Yeah, I don't think it would put them at disadvantage or anything like that, just because, like a surprise in 5e, a surprise round is basically like, the creatures miss their first turn.
Right.
That's what surprise is. So if you surprise them, basically it wouldn't necessarily give them disadvantage on the roll, I don't think.
Right. Okay.
But it would basically make it start the encounter and they miss their first turn, basically.
Okay, in my picture, I guess I'm always thinking of thieving. Like, this is a character-based thing, not a reality-based thing. So everybody right now, feel free. Do not call the cops. It's going to be okay. But if I were trying to rob a place, you just sneak up, see the guards, freeze them in place, walk by, wave, and just keep on going. You know what I mean? Like, they have no chance. They're frozen against the wall, and I'll just maybe even smile at them. Like,
But I mean, like, if you're trying to thieve things, you might want to freeze them in the opposite, such that they're looking in the opposite direction so they don't see you. Because
unless you're a very ballsy thief, like what was it, Lady Olenna from Game of Thrones? Like, you tell Cersei, I want her to know it was me.
Yeah, because I mean, it's only a minute. So you'd have to get in and get out.
So maybe I stroll quickly past the guards.
Or just like if you freeze them and you're in such a way that they're looking the other direction and then you quickly run in, grab something and run out, they might just be like, what was that? Just like, I couldn't move there for a second, and they're like looking around and they don't see anything and they might not think much of it then.
This spell is how I would siege a castle. I'd go up on the parapets, freeze everybody, push them off the wall, and just keep on going like dominoes.
Man, that would take some successful or unsuccessful saving throws on the DM's part.
Well, they're trying to fight me, are they? How smart could they be?
All right. Well, that's my dungeon delve for this week. Jeffrey, I think that's about the end of this episode 23 here. So
it seems like it's going to take us towards the end.
Oh, man, yeah. And towards the end of this episode, but Jeffrey, the end of this book is really starting to come up on us here. Just sneak peek for those that are listening that kept up with us so far. Just so you know, Jeffrey and I are talking about the next book already. We're already we have some good ideas for the next, how we're going to format the next book. We want to speed some things up a little bit. I guess we can tell them. I mean,
yeah, break it out. At least what we have now, there may still be more changes to come.
Right,
it's
of
a
course,
malleable work in progress.
Of course, like we already know that we wanted to do multiple chapters each per episode. We were throwing around like 2, 3, maybe 5, and then it's like, hey, you know what? The books are pretty neatly cut into parts.
Yep.
And so we're even thinking of maybe doing an entire part in a week, which is, I mean,
now when you say
like,
part, let the give the people an idea, because maybe those who haven't read along with us, or this is the first time they've entered the books, they may not realize what you mean by a whole part.
Well, a part is a major section of the book that usually has a theme to it. But I mean, the books are clearly laid out in parts: part 1, part 2, part 3, and at the beginning of each part, we have our letter from Drizzt, right? Mm-hmm. This book, for instance, we are just finishing up, I believe, part 4, and then part 5 is what we are now going to get into. So next episode, we will have what do we call it? An insight check, because it's one of Drizzt's letters, right? And then we'll only have, we only have six chapters left. 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 6 chapters left.
Yeah.
That's all that's left. So that means that if we do keep this format, book 2 is only going to be 5 weeks long.
Yep.
Because 5
and
parts.
Hopefully, what we want to do,
more, but I forgot.
this book is basically, to us, is a tent pole for everything that's about to come. We wanted to take quite a deep dive into every small nook and cranny of this first book. And then looking forward, I mean, there's, like another 60 books? There's a lot more books.
There's at least 35, yeah.
There's a lot more books that are coming that we really want to get into and continue to shine a dim light onto. And I think the easiest way we figured to do that is to try to make those books go a little quicker. And looking at it, taking it by parts and chunks like that will still give you the same breakdown, the same, here's a Drizzt of it, here's our dungeon delve, here's our dim light. But over a longer period of time, we're going to move a little bit quicker, because we're going to be covering things in book 2, book 3, book 4, book 5 that we touched on in book 1. And we don't want to overlap if we can help it. So, taking those in chunks and then summarizing it a little faster will allow us to cover more ground and still bring you guys a in-depth look at the mechanics, at how it breaks down. But also, for those people who are quite avid readers of the Drizzt series, you don't have to wait another 4 years for us to get to book 5.
Because I'm looking at this list of books and I'm just like, we're going to be doing this until I'm like 70, Jeffrey.
Yeah, and you know what? If you guys continue to smash that button and throw in money and give us support, and I got no problem doing it till I'm 70. But
oh, totally.
I would like to at least try to get to the end of his bookography. What do you call call it a list of books? It's not a discography, a bibliography.
Collection.
Yeah, it's collection. I just want to be able to go through and get through these storylines and to be able to see where they go and just experience that all with you, because you guys have been so much fun in how you see the things break down and how you bounce those ideas off of us, so we can sit there and look at them as well. It's been a blast, and we just want to keep it fresh and popping, as the kids say. Our demographic doesn't hit so heavy between the ages of 15 to 18, but we gonna keep it popping. Show gonna be bussing. It's easy.
Awesome. So again, a lot of this is still up in the air. We're just talking about it, but this is the one that we've been settled on for a while. But we'll keep you guys up to date. We'll probably have another episode in between the end of this book and the beginning of the second book. But we have a few weeks until we get there. But just wanted to throw that out there while it was still fresh in my mind. But yeah, that's going to do it for this episode. So thank you for listening. Remember that if you like this show, give us a 5-star rating, hit that subscribe button, hit those notification buttons, leave us a comment on the YouTube. And yeah, just make sure you're getting the most out of this podcast. Pick up a copy of the book and read along with us. If you don't have time to read, get the audiobook. Listen to it during your commute, while you're grocery shopping, while you're out for a walk on these nice spring days, or maybe if you're in the southern hemisphere, it's winter, so you're shoveling snow. I don't know how that works. I mean,
usually with a shovel.
Theoretically, understand how the climate works, but
yeah, we are an international podcast, so I don't know what the weather is like in Japan, one of our higher
Right.
markets out there.
Well,
If it's not springtime there,
they're the same hemisphere, so it should be
fair.
springtime there. But Australia, on the other hand, it's getting into winter down there, right? So, anyway,
when you guys are tending to your koalas, you can also listen
Oh, no.
to this podcast. I love koalas. They're a little bit disease-ridden and such, but you know what? They sleep 18 to 22 hours a day. They look furry. They hang out in the tree. God, love them.
Well, I know you're in our in Roll20. Your avatar was that drenched koala. It looked so evil.
Yep. When you get a koala wet, for those of us who have never looked at that, go ahead and put koala in the rain in your Google search engine.
Terrifying.
You will not believe that it is not a photoshopped image.
So once you're done reading or listening to the next chapter, shoot us an email at drizzdoneright@gmail.com to let us know your favorite parts, or you can log on to our Discord, join in on the ongoing discussion there. Remember, the link is in the episode description. We would love to hear from you.
I feel like when we come to the end of an episode, it'd be my least favorite part, right? We enjoy bringing this show to you every week, and for me, I know it's almost a tinge of sadness to know that we gotta wait another week to get together. Hopefully, when the tape runs out, we leave you with a little something to look forward to in the next episode. If you'd all like to support the show, we do have a link in the episode description that says, support the podcast. All the proceeds go towards improving the show and enhancing the moments that we do get to spend together. Thank you. We appreciate your time. We hope that next week you'll come back, press play again. Until then, farewell, play fair, and be well, friends.